Hi everyone, so I hope that you're all well, and here is our Christmas 2022 Patreon tutorial for coloured pencil. So this is our second Christmas tutorial now, so hasn't the time gone fast? And we've got something a little bit different this time. We are going to keep it with Botanical. We've got some little botanical elements in there, but we're also going to explore a new texture, which is obviously metal with the bell. So that'll be nice to do, and it's a lovely little Christmassy composition, so you could use it on a card for somebody, get some cards made, or something like that if you wanted to. But so yeah, so this one should be nice fun little project to do, and nice and on theme as well. So for the bell, before we begin, I just want to explain the bell. When I drew it up, I put in every little sort of detail that I could in the line drawing, and then after that I decided that I wanted to simplify it a bit, because there is so much going on, because it's a reflective surface, and instead of putting every tiny little bit of dark and light in there, I want to simplify it a little bit. So we're going to put the main colours in. We are going to keep some of the main lines, sort of these down here where we've got these nice curves going on, but as for all the details of the reflection on the right hand side, we're going to skip those because there's just too much going on for the size of this. So so I decided we'd simplify it a bit. Now with the white marks that we've got going on, we've got some lovely bright highlights down here that sort of give off little light flares. Now we're going to try and keep our whites. If we can't, do not worry, we can add them on later with some white gouache or some bleed proof white or something like that, something nice and bright and stark. So because we're not going to use any embossing, I don't want to emboss this, I want it nice and smooth. That's the most important thing when we're doing a smooth metal texture like this, is everything needs to be really smooth. We really want that sort of, you know, that glossy reflective appearance. So if we can't keep the white as bright as we want, then we can add it on later, so don't worry about that. So I think we're going to start with the bell. So I've got loads of the cool greys out. I think the only one that we're missing is cool grey 4. Yeah, that's right, because there's not that much difference between 4 and 5, so so we've just skipped that one. So what we'll do, yep, we'll get the bell done first, then we'll do the leaves. Now you'll notice that there's no reference photo for the berries, and that's because my holly unfortunately doesn't have any berries on it as of yet. So I've had to sort of look at photos of holly berries and just draw some up and go from that. So you can use my image. I'll put it on the Patreon site, obviously. You can use my image as your reference for the holly berries, unless you have some yourself, and you can just go and grab some out the garden and use your own if you've got access to them. So enough of me waffling, let's go ahead and get ready and get cracking with this. Okay, so there's various ways that we could go about this. We really need to be careful about matching the right tone to the right area on the bell. So what I think we'll do to make it easier is we're going to establish all of the darks first, just as I would do if I was doing a leaf or whatever. I'd establish all of the darks first. So we're going to stick to that, so we can get in these little dark areas down here, and there's a couple just in here on this area that are the real darks. So we're going to put those down first, and then we're going to work on our mid-tones. Now obviously our lightest section is this one down the centre and straight up the middle of the handle there, and that's going to be sort of, you know, your cool grey one, possibly mixed with some white as well. But anyway, that's what we're going to do first. So let's remove a little bit of graphite. We still want to be able to see our marks, because it's very important that we sort of get all this in the right place. So I'm not going to go mad. I'm just going to very gently tap just at the area that I want to work on. So just coming up here, and we'll just do that little bit there for now. Okay, so make sure your pencils are nice and sharp before we begin. I'll just go and sharpen mine now. Okay, and I'm going to begin with the Cold Grey 6. So this is a pencil that doesn't tend to come out very often. I always go for the Cold Grey 5, or the Warm Grey 5 more than anything, but this one's making an appearance today. So this is a really fine line, so I want to get this nice and thin, so I've sharpened it on the sanding block. Now, if you feel more comfortable going up, go upwards. If you feel more comfortable pulling down, then do that. Whichever way you want to do it, it's up to you. So I'm going to start at the top here and making sure it's on the outer line of the graphite. And I'm going to pull down. Just to here. I'm going to put in this little bit that we've got that comes over the edge there. So I'm just going to sort of block that little rectangular shape in. And then I'm going to come off that and come and meet that line there. Now it comes slightly thicker here, so we can just extend the width just a little bit at the bottom here as it becomes a curve there. And we are going to be blending this in later on. Okay, so that's our first little bit down. And then from that rectangle again, I'm just going to come off and create the lines for that shape there at the bottom. Now, actually, let me get a piece of tracing paper because this is going to end up smudged. Just 1 second. Okay, that's better. I really don't want to smudge the graphite. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the top, right at the edge, and come down on either side. And I'm not working in my small circular motions at the moment. I'm just pulling and stroking downwards. So I want these lines to be nice and neat. And it's wider, obviously, at the bottom than it is at the top. Just re-going over that, just darkening it up slightly. Okay. And then let's just continue along, following our shape. And I'm not being as overly light-handed as I usually am with coloured pencil for this section, because I want quite a bit of pigment down. I'm not pressing hard, but you know, I'm not doing the extra light pressure that we normally do. I really want to get some good colour down. Just make sure it's nice and neat. Okay. Now I'm using little circular motions to fill in, just so that I can make sure that in this wider section that we've got a nice even lay down there, now that I've established the shape. And we really want to keep sharp pencils here, so if you feel your pencil is going blunt, then please do sharpen it. Okay, just going to get my drafting brush and just dust off the excess. Right, let's just have a look. I'm just going to add a little bit more pigment in here at the bottom. Just going to re-go over that one more time. And while I'm doing so, I'm just making sure that everything's nice and neat and just as I want it. It's coming out just a tiny bit further with this here. And that's better. Okay, and now I'm going to resharpen my pencil. Okay, so moving along to the next bit, and I'm actually not going to take the graphite away on this next section because I don't want to remove the line next to it, and it's so close that I run the risk of doing that. So I've sharpened it on the sanding block, the pencil. So I'm going to put my curve in from here. So I'm going to follow the line of my graphite, put my curve in at the bottom there, and apparently I'm going up this time, keeping this line nice and thin. You'll notice I'm twisting my pencil as I go, and that's so that I retain as sharp a point as possible. Okay. And let's just leave that there. And then we've got one more line just coming down here. So I'm going to pop that in. Again, not taking the graphite because I don't want to remove it from the areas next to it. So let's run down here. And this is a bit of a funny shape. This sort of comes off at the end there. And gets just a tiny bit wider at that bottom, and then up. And there's also just a little bit, sort of a continuation of this just here. I'm just going to pop that little mark in there. Okay. So I'm just looking over at this side now, excuse me, and we're just going to pop in this dark line that we can see here. And this only runs to where this section stops here. So we're going to stop that line right there. And just keep it there. Okay, so for the dark on the base of the bell, that's our dark areas done. So we're going to leave those alone, and then we're going to move up to this section. So I'm just going to sharpen my pencil again. Okay, so moving up into here, again, I'm not going to remove the graphite because I don't want to remove all the other little marks, and it's a tiny area. So we have a little bit of this dark underneath where the handle joins the base, and it's mainly on that right hand side. So nice sharp point, sharpen this on the sanding block again, and we're just going to put that dark area there. Okay, and then we'll start with our little lines. So we've got one just here. Okay, and then we've got a little shape in here. So we're going to pop that in so it's sort of rounded at the top. Little notchy mark. So just a little dark shape there. And then we've got one more line on that side. And we're just going to edge it very slightly there. Okay, and now we're going to come into this sort of section in the middle here. So I'm just going to alter the position of my hand. In fact, I'm just going to sharpen this on the sanding block one last time. Let's make sure it's really sharp. And we are going to do two lines. So one straight across there. And one over the top, leaving a very thin band of light just through the center there. Let's just have a look. Okay, and then that needs to flick up at the end sort of. And on this side it's going to pull down slightly. Just tiny little marks there. And again on this side, pull down slightly, and here I'm going to pull up. Okay, so now we can do a continuation of this line. So we're coming up over here, and this sort of forks off a little bit, splits into two. There's there. And then it continues all the way up. And then we've got this mark in here. Now at the top, so I'm just going to put this sketchy little mark in there at the top. I'm going to leave a very, very thin line of white. Come directly underneath it. Here, pull down, and then we've just got some sort of little marks on that side there. So just putting in a couple of little notches again. And that's that bit. And then here we've just got a little bit of a line that comes across there. The little pull down just there. It's not across the top, it's just slightly underneath. Okay, and now I'm going to have to sharpen my pencil again because I want this line to be nice and thin down here. Okay, now we can just remove the graphite a tiny bit from this area because it's not going to disturb anything else. It's not right next to it. Okay. It's a nice, sharp, thin pencil line. Just following up all the way to the top there. And then we're just going to put in that little split there. Okay, let's have a look. Just going to very gently go over one last time. Just deepen it up slightly. Can always come back and do this again later on when we re-establish the values. So, okay, right, so let's leave that for now. Okay, so that's all of the very darkest colour done for the moment. So let's go to our cold grey 5 now. It's very unusual to say cold grey 5. I keep wanting to say warm grey. But yeah, so let's go to our cold grey 5, and we're going to come down this side of the handle here and start getting that in. So let's just remove that bit of graphite, because we have got a little bit of a highlight just in the center. So let's just remove a tiny bit of that from there. And let's just look. So, okay. So we'll start coming down from this side. And I come down just a little bit with my line. And then I'm going to line the outside as well, while my pencil's still nice and sharp. Keep twisting it to retain the point as long as possible. Okay, right, so let's get some of this down. So now we can go to our small circular motions and fill in the space between our lines. So I just want to make sure that we've got a really nice even layer of colour. And I'm ignoring all of the little lines that we can see. Just as I said before, I just want to simplify it slightly. So the only thing we've got is a little bit of a highlight just in this section. So when we come to that, so about here, I'm just going to avoid that area. And then just come down slightly thicker just on the inside there. Okay, so closing that now. We can shorten that later. I want to come through with there with a little bit of white in a minute. Okay. And now I'm going to start lightening my pressure as we come down to here. And then I shall be moving on to the cold grey. Where am I? Oh no, it's the coal grey 4 I've got. It's the coal grey 3 that I missed out. Right, so I'll come down to the coal grey 3. And again, I've got another little bit of a highlight in here. So I'm going to sort of come in between that there. There's a little bit of a highlight just over the top and in between those two marks. So I'm just going to join this up here. And then I'm going to go back to my coal grey 5 and pull this in from underneath our dark area there. So keeping a light pressure now. Then to our cold grey 4 again. Coming over the top. Pulling that down to leave a little bit of a highlight just above that dark line at the bottom there. Going back to my cold grey 5 and just adding another little bit of a layer just at the top there. Okay, and then with the cold grey 4 I'm going to add a layer of that over the top of what we've just done in here. So going over all of that cold grey 5. Just going to dust off every so often. Make sure that my edge is nice and neat there. Sometimes the tooth of the paper can make it look like your edge isn't very sharp. Oops, just dropping my brush. Okay, just going to pick up the coal grey 2 and I'm going to pull that down just a little bit into this area here where we left that little bit of light, still leaving a tiny little bit of white there. And I'm also going to take this just into here slightly and pull it down at the bottom here, again where we left that little area of light. I'm also going to run this all the way up over the top of what we've done, and because this is a very pale colour, it's going to act as a sort of blend layer without being as pale as white or as opaque. So we can come in here, we can blend this, and then we can deepen up afterwards if we need to, and then we can get some nice sharp lines because we've come in with this blend layer. And I'm also going to run this just down here. Just going to take my whites, nice and sharp, and run that through that area of highlight that we left. So that it stays white, but it looks blended. It doesn't just look like blank paper. There we go. And we can shorten that space if we need to now with a nice sharp pencil, because once you've used a white or a cold grey 1 or a cold grey 2 or a warm grey 1 or 2 or a cream, you've pushed the tusk down of the paper and it enables you to get a much smoother line. Just going to run a little tiny bit of this at the bottom, just here where that highlight is, and just here. It's pulling it through there. Okay. Just going to grab my cold grey 6 again, re-establish that dark area just in here. And you'll notice I've got a much finer line now because I've got that blend layer on. So just that little bit there. Okay. So going back to my warm grey, cold grey 5 now. I'm never going to stop saying warm grey. I've sharpened it on the sanding block, and now I'm just going to re-establish my edges. Make sure they're nice and neat, which is much easier now that I've got that blend down. You'll notice that your pencil runs much more smoothly over the paper. Just off. Okay, and then I'm just going to come down this inside again, deepen that up, and then from this side I'm going to come even closer, so I'm shortening the gap on that highlight, making it thinner. So do this first while your pencil's nice and sharp. Okay, and then I'm going to add another layer of this over the top, just to bring that depth back. And then that should give us a nice smooth finish to that area. It's going to make sure that white tapers off nicely, and at the top here okay, and then coming down to the bottom, lifting my pressure, making sure it stays nice and light as we come down into that sort of blended area that we've got there with a bit of highlight going on. And then we can work down from that dark, add a little bit more depth in this area here, again staying light as we get to the bottom of that bit. and then just add in that little bit there. Okay, I'm just going to do exactly the same just down here. So cold grey 5 coming from that dark line along to the end there. Okay, and I'm just going to put a little tiny bit of the cold grey. It was 2. If I said 3, I meant 2. Getting all confused with the numbers. Put in a little layer of this just over the top there, just to smooth it. Make sure it's nice and smooth. Back in to the cold grey 5. So I can keep that depth. And then my cold grey 6 just to add that dark line there. And then my cold grey 6 again, just underneath. I may even come in with black later on to the really dark areas. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Right, so let's just fill in this top section of the bell here. So I've got a cold grey 4 out, and I'm going to come all the way across. So putting in that line just across there. And just sort of outlining this tip here. Okay, and then just coming from inside here, I'm just going to work in nice and gently, and then leaving a bit of light on that left hand side there. I'm going to add a tiny little bit of the cold grey 5 over the top in this right hand corner. Just there. And then I'm going to go over that with the cold grey 2. Smooth it off. Take it into that light space there. And just dust. And I'm going to go back into my cold grey 4. Re-establish the depth on that outer corner. That would even take a tiny little bit of the cold grey 6 just on the line at this outer edge here. Just there, just to make it stand out slightly more. I'm going to bring a tiny little bit of the cold grey 4. Oh no, that's cold grey 1, I don't want that. Maybe gone. Sorry, cold grey 2, and just pull that down there. There's a little bit of light at that top. Now I can go to the cold grey 1 and just pop a little bit in that light area on the left hand side there. And a little bit more cold grey 4. Okay, so staying with the handle, we may as well get this section done. So on with our cold grey 4, we're going to come up the side here just start to outline the edge. Okay, and then we're just going to very gently work our way in a little bit from that edge. Not quite touching our dark line. Leaving a little bit of a gap. Small circular motion so that this feathers out. Coming all the way down. Leaving a little bit of a gap again. Just there. And then continuing down into here, into this section. And we can also edge this bit here, doing the same. Okay, and then move into our cold grey 2. So I'm just going to sharpen mine. And we're going to take that, we're going to go over what we've just done here. Let's bring this all the way down. And we're going to bring this now towards our dark line. Not going into that fork at the bottom with this. And bring it closer to our line here. And just into here. And I'm going to move to our cold grey 1. And I'm going to go over the whole lot with a layer of that as well. If you happen to go over your dark grey line with this, that's absolutely fine. Really doesn't matter because we can pop it back in a bit. And this is just going to serve to smooth all that pigment down. And blend everything together nicely. Make sure to dust so you get rid of any of that pigment. You don't want to smudge it across your paper. Okay, and then I'm just going to come through right up close to that dark line with a little bit of white. So right up next to it. Just that off again. And down here, let's make sure we get a bit of white in there. And in here. And then we'll go back to, where are you? Cold grey 2. Just going to sharpen that on the sanding block. Make sure it's nice and sharp. I'm just going to re-outline the edges. This may not be dark enough. I may need to go back to the 4. Yeah, I do. So let's pick up the 4. Let's sharpen that on the sanding block instead. Re-go over the edges with a nice sharp pencil. Don't want to drag any of that dust up. Take that all the way to the top there. Okay, over to cold grey 2. And let's get this in on the other side of the dark line. So come in from here and sort of straight up the centre. Filling in the space there. Oh, forgot about that little bit down there. Let's just get that bit in. Just leaving our little bits of highlight, making sure they stay. And then down here. Okay, cold grey 1. Don't know which one I'm using, so let's just go over that. Re-go over what we've already done. Take our white, add a little bit of this. I sound like a cooking program now. Add a little bit of this, a little bit of that. smooth everything off. Just make sure it's all nice and smooth. Okay, and then we can go back to Cold Grey 6, make sure it's really nice and sharp. Sharpen it on your sanding block. And then let's put this back in and darken up. Oh, there goes my tip. Just dust that off. Pressed a little bit too hard. And you should get a lovely, nice, thin, dark line now. There we go. That's nice. Okay. Now while I've got that 6 and it's nice and sharp, I can see another thin line just here next to the highlight. So I'm just going to run that down there. Just there. And that is copied in this little section here. Let's just check. Okay. And then I'm just going to run a very thin line of this directly next to that highlight here in this darker area, and just make that pop a little bit more, so we can just see a thin dark line just running up there. Okay, right, so this center area of the handle is quite light, so we're going to use our Cold Grey 1 and our white to render this. So we're going to come in very lightly with our Cold Grey 1 to begin with. Just start popping that down from the top. And I'm just going to pull through a couple of lines with this. Just there. Continue this line through the middle. And start bringing it out towards the bottom here. So keeping a light space either side. And then run into the middle where it splits off there. Okay. Now let's come into this area, and we're going to take our Cold Grey 4 and we're going to just extend this dark area slightly without it being too dark, and narrow down those highlights. just there. Okay, and then again at the bottom, still staying with this, I'm going to just pop in a little section there. Okay, right, now let's take our white and let's blend this in. Now I'm going to be going over the edge, just over the edge of either side. So onto the dark and onto the light as well. And that's just going to blend these edges into this centre section and give us that lovely smooth appearance. And with this layer you can apply quite a bit of pressure. You want to make sure everything's nice and covered and everything's lovely and smooth. And from here, it looks like we're already getting some lovely nice form. Okay, let's just come into section here. Make sure everything's nice and blended in there. We can come back and re-establish those darks in a minute. Just want to blend everything in. Okay, so let's go back to our 6. Just pop our darks back in. Just making sure those notches are nice and dark there. Going to take my my white and just run it through there again. Take my Carl Grey 5 and just put that line back in a better place. That wasn't where it should have been. That's better. It's going to come up and over now and just darken this outer area up slightly. Still want the highlight, but just don't want it quite as bright. And I've just very slightly gone over. So I'm just going to take my Tombow mono eraser and just clean that edge up a little bit, just there. Let's have a look. To my Carl Grey 5. So I'm just adjusting the tones now, adding a little bit more depth where I feel I need it. That's looking pretty nice. And again, anywhere where you feel that's not to your liking, you can just adjust it. Just pick up the dust with that. Okay. It's going to come back across here with a little bit of 6, just in that corner there. And take a little tiny bit of the cold grey too, and just come through those 2 lines in the centre, just a little bit there. And just going to sharpen the 6 again on my sanding block one last time. And just once again, it's just ever so slightly deepen this line up. I want to try and get it as dark as I can without using black. I want to save my black for my very darkest areas. If I can get away with it. Okay, that's looking nice. Right, so let's take our cold grey 4. I'm going to come in between the area here, leaving a little bit of light just there, back to the 6, deepen up the very edges. Make it nice and dark in there. And on this outer edge here. Oh, sorry, I just knocked the camera with my glasses. Just define that edge a little more there. And we'll do the same over here. Okay, that's looking pretty nice now, so I'm quite pleased with that. So let's move on to this little bit here. Right, okay, so cold grey 5 we're going to start with, and we're going to come from the edge and work our way up. We've got a bit of highlight sitting along the top, so we want to work darker from the base here, coming lighter as we go up, and sort of leaving a bit of white area around the top. So let's just very gently remove a little bit of graphite from that edge because we want it nice and light. Okay, this is going to be awkward for my hands, so I'm just going to come in here around that reflection. Just coming around there first. Then I can go to my small circular motions and start working outwards. Lightening the pressure as I move upwards. And not taking this all the way to the edge. Same on the other side. Back to the small circular motions. And keeping the pressure nice and light as I come to the edge. Okay, let's move down to the cold grey 4 and let's go over what we've just done. So building up the saturation, and again keeping it light in that outer area, so directly under the reflection. Okay, move down to the cold grey 3. In fact, let me just sharpen that. Okay, taking that over everything that we've done, aside from the reflection that we've already completed. And then gently feathering that slightly further out towards the edge. Underneath, out to the side. Just have to turn my arm a little bit because it's a very awkward position there. And then again, gently feathering that out to the edge. Okay, and then we'll go to our cold grey 1. Let's sharpen that as well. And let's take this from the outside in this time. So let's create our edge with this. Just making sure it's nice and neat by going over the edge there. And I'm going to create the edge on the other side as well. Okay, and now I'm going to move inwards and start smoothing everything out. And I'm just going to come over that shoulder again there. Just make sure everything's as I want it. Just dust off a little bit. Add a little bit of white to the very edges now. It's right on the outside here. Again over here. To make sure we catch that light. Put a little bit more there. Okay, I'm going to go back to my cold grey 5 and I'm just going to deepen up the edge here. Where it's darker. and gently feather a little bit further up here. Just going to take my cold grey one and just blend that in again. Again on this side, cold grey 5. Got a little bit of a darker mark here and a darker mark here. I'm just going to pop those in. There's a bit of a line there. And a bit of a shape here. Cold grey 6. Just deepening up the outside line on that reflection there. It's darker than I've made it. And here. And then deepening up right underneath there. I'm going to take the cold grey 6 and I'm just going to make more of an edge on this right hand side where we can see it's slightly darker there. Okay. And I'm just going to neaten up this shape where it comes over and neaten up that line again, just there. That's better. Let's have a look. Just going to take a little bit of white directly underneath that dark line. See another little bit of light there. And again on that shoulder. Okay, and I think that'll do for now because we can always come back in and re-establish that afterwards. Just going to take a tiniest bit of black and come right into this join here. I keep knocking it with my glasses, I'm ever so sorry. And just really deepen up that little join there. Where it joins onto the base. And just there. And then we'll just take a tiny little bit of black on the underside there. Let's have a look. Okay, now we do have a darker line along the top on this side, so I'm just going to take the cold grey 6 very lightly and just drag that just over the top there. Just a little bit of dust there, let's just pick that up. That's it. Okay, right, so we'll leave that now. We can always come back and deepen up in a bit if we need to. Let's concentrate on the base now. Right, okay, so let's start on this side. And we're going to start with our cold grey 4. So basically the colours that we used at the top are going to mirror what we do down the bottom. So let's just take away a little bit of this edge here. Not too much. And we can just tap at that little bit there. Okay, all right, so I'm just going to be looking at this edge here. And I just want to get a bit of an outline first. Okay, so let's pull this in a bit. Start bringing it down. And don't forget we're simplifying this, so ignore all of the, you know, the tiny little lines, the tiny little marks. We're trying to keep it relatively simple. So splaying out as we come to the bottom slightly. And then we also, there's a patch of this colour just here. So we're just going to bring that in as well. There's a little bit of a mark of it here. And this is the part where we've got all these little white dots up here. We're going to add those in later on with some opaque white paint. Let's have a look. It's going to add a very fine little curve just there. Okay, and then I'm going to go over that with cold grey too. So over what we've already done first of all, right up to the edge. Let's just dust that off. You can afford to have a little bit more pressure with this. So again, we want this smooth. So yeah, over everything that we've done first. Lightly over that little curve there. Okay, and then let's start to bring this in to the white space. And we're going to take it up to that first dark line, the very fine one, just to meet that. Cold grey one now. And let's take that all the way over everything that we've done. You can afford once again to go in with a bit more pressure here. And you can see that I'm using more pressure because I'm creating more dust. So let's just dust that off. Okay, let me just sharpen my white. And then I'm going to bring my white in between the darker areas. So up here. Up in here. Right up next to that dark line. Just bring in a little bit up there. I'm going to go back to my cold grey 4. I'm going to deepen that little bit up there slightly. And I'm going to deepen my edge as well. Make sure everything blends in. Just going to make sure that that edge is in the correct place and position. Make sure I'm dark enough on that outside edge there. May just take a little bit of 5 and just stroke up that edge there. May even take a little bit just up here. Okay, right, cold grey 1. And I'm going to bring this in between the 2 dark lines. Not taking care to not go over them. I want them blended now. So you can certainly go over the edges. White. And I'm taking that in and all the way over. Up between the 2. Just dust that off. Taking a little bit more white. Okay, and then I'm going to sharpen my cold grey 6 and sharpen it on the sanding block. And let's redefine this first dark line. And again, this should be nice and smooth now. Nice and easy to apply. Just make sure it's really nice and dark. we really may go over that with a little bit of black in a minute. It's very dark there. I'm just going to take my cold grey 5 and I'm going to bring this in a little bit further. Just want it slightly darker on this outer edge. Only very slightly. Back to our cold grey 1, and we're going to come into our next section. So in between these 2 lines here. Nice and easy to do it section by section here. Just defining the edge there. Okay, to our white, let's just dust that off. And again, don't be worried about going into that dark line. We want it nice and smooth. And just blending all that cold grey 1 out. Can actually deepen that up slightly, so let's go back over with our cold grey 1. It's not quite as light as this. Okay, again, nice sharp number 6. And let's pop this back in. And I'm going to thicken this up slightly. You can see a little bit there that hasn't quite blended, so I'm just going to use the cold grey to just push that back and blend it, and then re-go over with the 6. It's a really dark, sharp line this is. See a little speck there, let's just blend that out. I think that's a mark in the paper. Okay, let's continue. Just making sure that my line is correct. And hits that top bit. Let's just have a look. I'm just adjusting little things that I notice as I go. Okay, let's concentrate back down here again. Okay, I'm just going to go over with a tiny little bit of black right in the centre, just here, just to really add a little bit of contrast there. And again, just in our line here. So on to our next section, I'm going to use Coral Grey 5 to add in this this darker area here. So coming down from the top, I'm going to try and save that little bit of light in the middle, but I'm really not fussed if it gets lost, because I shall just add it in afterwards. Some nice sparkly lights. Okay. I'm just going to add in this little bit of reflection that we can see here as well. Reflection, sorry, but yeah, it is reflection. It's this little bit of dark. Okay. I'm going to go to the Coral Grey 2 now. And I'm going to come up the side here. And over the top of that 5. Bring a little bit of it just up there. Into the Coral Grey 1. And let's just go over everything in here. Okay, just going to sharpen that. And then as we come down here, I'm going to keep this a little bit lighter now. So not too much pigment going down there. Just going to sharpen the white, and then I'm going to go over the Coral Grey 2 at the back. Trying to keep some of that dark bit next to it. Let's just test that. And bringing the white up through here. I'm going to bring it into that little bit there where there's the highlights. And then I'm going to take it over our dark colour as well, so that that's all nice and smooth for us to pop that back down. And then let's take a little bit of the Coral Grey 1 and come into this little triangular section here, make that meet, and over it with the white. Okay, sharpening the number 6, coal grey 6 on the sanding block. And again, let's redefine our dark lines. Let's just dust that off. Just going to go through that one more time. And follow it round. To the edge there. I'm not going to go over this dark line until we get to the next section. I'm just going to add a little bit more just to the top here. It's deepening up slightly across there. Okay, so moving into this middle section, I'm just going to take away that little bit of graphite there. Let's have a look. Okay, so coal grey 4, and very gently I'm coming from the bottom, very gently working up where we've got this little bit of shadow, just across the bottom here, bringing it around that light space there. Making sure we keep a nice light pressure so we can fade this out. Comes up slightly higher here, just there. Let's just have a look. It's going to come in with the Tombow and take away that little graphite mark there. And I'm going to make a bit more of an edge. Just here. And then gently fade that out. Coming up slightly higher again this side. Just comes up that little bit more. Okay, let's have a look. Alright, we've got our dark line, and then I'm going to go to the coal grey 5 and add in this dark section that's next to our very dark line, leaving a very thin band of light between the two. It comes off at an angle there. Okay, I'm going to sharpen my white, and I'm also going to sharpen it on the sanding block. So let's just quickly do that. And I'm going to run that in that white space, just between those two darker colours. And take my cold grey 5 again and just shorten that space. Which is much easier to do when you've put the white on and you've got that little bit of a blend. Just come down here slightly. Okay, right, let's just sharpen our cold grey one. And let's start bringing a little bit of this into here. Nice and gently. Don't want too much going on, just like we did up the top, leaving a little bit down that centre there. So sort of bringing it down in gentle lines. Let's take a little bit across the top to help blend that area. I'm going to bring it over that darker patch of grey there, just to smooth it in. And I'm going to go over this area at the bottom. And just gently blend that. Lightening the pressure as we move up. Come over here. Again. Let's lighten as we move up. There'll be barely any colour in this centre here. Oh, wrong end. Just take the Tombow and get rid of that mark. It's important that bottom bit stays nice and clean. I'm just going to make sure my edge is good, just along here. Okay, right, now let's take our white and take this over this whole middle section. So I'm going to start down the bottom here and start blending this shadow area. And I want to bring it up. I want that area below to be really white. I don't want to drag any of the grey into it. Make sure this is really nice and blended down here. You can always deepen up if we need to. Okay, now we can start coming up the side. And into the centre. Just going to hit the edge of that darker area so it's nice and smooth. And just make sure I've got a good layer of white down all over that area. I'm going to come into this section here next to that grey, that little curve, which is nice and pale. Just there. Okay, and I'm going to go back to my coal grey one and bring a little bit more colour in. And this will just ensure, the white being down first will just ensure that that stays really nice and light. Let's just blend that little bit out there. Let's bring in a little bit more down. Just through this section here. Coal grey 5. It's deepening up that little space there. Make sure that this little bit's deep enough. Back to our 6. And I've still got quite a sharp point on that, so I'm just going to re-establish our line here. And this little bit here. I'm going to bring a bit of dark to the edge of this, just a bit, not too much. Just there. And bring a little bit of depth through here where we can see that bit of a dark line. And there's a little bit of it just continues there. Take this up slightly higher actually. Okay, just need to neaten this top edge up now. And I'm going to re-go over that with the coal grey 2. Just to blend, make sure that just the edge is dark, not the whole thing. That's better. Just needs to be slightly darker here. I'm just going to have to turn this for a second just to get a good edge, because I'm struggling to be able to get where I want to be. Oh, and I've knocked it with my glasses once again. Sorry. Just want quite a dark edge along this side. There we go, that's better. Sometimes you just have to turn your page. And let's just, there we go. Just going to take a little bit of the cold grey too while it's in my hand. Just deepen up this little bit at the bottom. Just very gently. Okay, so let's move this over slightly so I can just get to our darker side. Okay, right, so for the darker side, we'll start with Cold Grey 5. And let's get some of this in. Okay, so that line there, we need to re-establish that in a bit with a much, probably take a bit of black to that. So let's just start working our cold grey in. Took it up to that graphite line so I can leave a thin little bit of white that we can see. So let's pop that in now. Okay, so while that's there, let's just run through that with a sharp white. And then come down. Into this curve. Keep a nice sharp line here at this edge. And then continue working through. It's going to come in slightly closer to our white. Leaving a very thin gap at the top where that highlight is. And then again we've got another area of white running down here. This is more of a broken line there this time. So let's just get that established. So I'm just going to leave a few areas free of any colour. Thin line down here, and let's close it at the bottom. once again, let's go through with the sharp white. And then we can shorten it later on. And then we've got one last area of light, which pretty much runs down to the bottom. So let's just do that. Up to the edge there. And then let me run through that with the white as well. Okay, and then let's come around that lip at the bottom there. Start working in here. Close this space up now. Just make sure everywhere's nice and even. It's going to come down slightly darker in between those two spaces and shorten this one on this side. And on this side. Okay. Now let's go over that whole area with Coal Grey 4. Start to build up a bit of saturation. Feel free to be a little bit more, apply a bit more pressure with this layer. Not crazy, but you know, you can go a little bit harder. Just make sure to keep it light when we get up by the edge there. And don't worry if you lose any of the white, we can bring it back, it's no problem. So nice and gentle when you come up here at the edge. You want that nice and neat. Going to establish that while I've still got a relatively sharp point. Let's just dust off. And make sure that my bottom edge is nice and neat as well. Just always making sure to dust off frequently. You really do not want to drag that dust everywhere and make a right mess. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, so I'm going to run over that whole thing now with the coal grey 2, just to smooth it all off, and then we'll re-deepen where is necessary. Come down this edge. It's going to edge the bottom. Just want to make sure this is all nice and smooth. Okay, right. I'm just going to take my coal grey 1 and I'm going to lighten a couple of areas. So just at the edge here, we've got a bit of reflected light. Just inside here. I'm going to bring a bit of light from the bottom just up there. And now I'm going to go back to my coal grey 5 and I'm going to darken up in this section. so that you can see the contrast more. Just going to sharpen the pencil, come back to the edge here, and while it's nice and sharp, just want to get a nice line around there. Okay, and let's continue. Right, now at this top edge here, we've got a couple of little sort of bits that just pull off. So I'm just going to pop those in and then continue just deepening up slightly. Let's sort that edge out there. That's better. Okay. Alright, so continuing along. Just deepening up this section here. We've got a bit of a line here, just gonna run that in there. Got a little bit of one here as well. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the warm grey 6. Let's sharpen that on the sanding block. And let's pop this darker line back in on the side of that white highlight there. Okay, and then we're going to bring a line on the left hand side of this highlight here and just help to make that pop a little bit. Just there. And also down the side. This one, just nice and thin. Okay, and again back to this area, pulling a couple of little bits down again. It's a funny area, that is. I don't like not being able to get my hand in the correct position there. I'm just going to deepen this outer corner. There we go. That's better. Right, let's have a look. Just going to edge this again slightly more. Okay, so let's work on that bottom edge now, and then we'll come and put some of our lovely highlights on. So let's just take a good look. I'm just going to thicken this up slightly. Just there. Okay, so with this bottom area, the first thing that I'm going to do is go around the entire area with a layer of white, so that I can edge it really nice and neatly, and that I don't have to worry about making any kind of mess. Not taking the graphite out, I'm just going along with a nice hard layer of white, really pushing the pigment down and just ensuring that it's nice and smooth for me to work on. And right up to that edge there. Just going over it another time just to make sure it's nice and covered. Okay, right. Okay, so I'm going to go to the cold grey 4 first, sharpened it on the sanding block, and I'm going to come around my edge with that first of all. On this outside, and I'm also going to come around on this side. But I'm not going to have anything, no edge at the bottom in the middle. Let me just neaten that up slightly. Okay, so fade in just as I get to there. Okay, and now while we've got this out, we're going to start bringing in some of those bits that we can see coming down into the edge there. And I'm also going to just edge above it as well. I can always go darker than this if I want to. I'm just going to pop it on with the 4 first and see how I feel. But make sure that your patterns come straight down on this edge. They're not curved. They just run straight down. Okay, so that's the dark one. So we need our cold grey 6 for that. So let's just sharpen that and pop that back in. Make sure it's all nice and neat. A little one just off to the side here. And there's a little bit here. bit just to the right, the left, sorry, of that mark there. We've got nothing really going along there. Let's just line that slightly better. And then it starts just over here. Just there. Oh, not again. These glasses. Honestly, every time I move closer to the page, I hit the camera. So I've got that bit there. And now I'm going to change to the 5. Leave a bit of white space there. Follow along. Another gap there. And then we can gently run this. And because we've got the white under, it's going to stay lighter. We can run this all the way along towards the end. I'm going to go back to my 6 and just deepen it up. Just here slightly and just pulling little marks through. Taking care to still leave a little bit of that highlight at the edge, just that reflected edge there. Let's have a look. So I'm just neatening up at the top above it. So I'm just going to darken up slightly above it there with my 6. And just lighten off a little bit. A little bit of shadow. So just adjusting those values. Taking my 5, and again I'm just going to very gently just go over this area and just deepen it up slightly, only very slightly, so that the middle is free of any colour. I'm going to take my 5 and very gently just neaten up the edge here where we have that bit of shadow there. And I'm just going to pull a little bit of 5 up into that shadow area. Very gently. Faded away to nothing. Maybe just a tiny little bit more, just around the edge. And I can always go back to it with my white and just soften it a little bit if I want to. Right, okay, let's just take a good old look at that. Okay, I'm just going in with my black. Just going to slightly darken that little bit there, and that little bit there. Let's have another look. I'm going to run a tiny little bit of black up this line here. Let's get some good contrast. A little bit more black up here. There we go. Right, okay, and I think it's about time that we can add some of the white lights in. Okay, so for my white, I'm going to use some of the Pearl Burnish liquid white coloured pencil. I'm going to give this another go today because I haven't used this enough, and I always use the PH Martin's bleed proof white. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of this onto a palette. And I'm going to use a very, very thin liner brush. I'm just going to pick some of that up with my brush. My brush is slightly damp. It's not wet, just slightly damp. Okay, and then I'm just going to start adding some of these very bright highlights. Just make sure. So I've got a little tiny one there, and you don't have to add all of them in if you don't want to. I'm just going to add a few of them in. Now I think the mask pen would be really good for this as well. Some little ones up here. A couple of little bright ones down here. That nice bright one just in here. Just going to stroke up the side there. And there's one just there. Bit there. And then you're probably not going to see these as much on here. So this is on the very, very light part. And line up there. The center. Just up there. And we can make, oh, a bit too thick there. Make a bit more of a thing of this one. And here, make that broken line a bit brighter. Little tiny thin bit up here. Add a bit more to that one there on that edge. Just in there. A little bit lighter here. I'm just going to drag a little bit more light through either side there. A couple of little flashes of light there. Not convinced that this is bright enough, you know. I feel like maybe my gouache would have been better. I feel like I've got to go over this to really get some brightness. Yeah, I'm having to sort of add it twice. Which I'm not too happy about, but that's the way it is. Okay. And I've got a little bit of a flare light there. And a little bit here. Make that bit a little brighter. And just tap a couple of little brighter bits at the top there. Okay, I think that'll do. I've got a couple of tiny catches of light just down there as well. Okay, right.